Welcome to the Quiet Hours. You can get new episodes a week early and ad-free by becoming a subscriber. Just follow the links in the episode description. Take a moment to settle in. Let your body find a comfortable position, whether you're lying down or leaning back. Allow your hands and arms to rest loosely, your legs to relax. Begin to notice your breathing, slow, gentle, natural. You don't need to change it, just follow it. With each inhale, feel the coolness of the air. With each exhale, let go of the day, the noises, the thoughts that have followed you. Let them drift away like snowflakes on a quiet winter morning. Imagine the soft hush of a farmhouse in winter. The walls hold warmth, the floorboards creak just enough to remind you you're home. Outside, snow falls steadily, covering the land in quiet white. There is nothing urgent, nothing demanding attention. You are safe here. You are warm. Think of the faint scent of coffee or tea, a fire crackling in the stove, and the gentle rhythm of a day unfolding without rush. You are in that quiet, in that slow space, ready to watch life move softly, without hurry. Let your mind rest there for a moment. Let your thoughts settle like snow settling on the fields outside. With each breath, you sink deeper into calm, into ease. When you're ready, the story will begin. A story of quiet winter days, of companionship, and of a warm place that holds you gently through the storm. The snow had started before dawn, the way it often did out here, quietly, without asking anyone's permission. Ethan noticed it first, when the light through the kitchen window didn't look right, not darker exactly, just softer, blurred at the edges, as if the morning had decided to take its time. He stood at the sink with his hands wrapped around a chipped blue mug, watching the world beyond the glass lose its sharpness. Snow fell straight down, no wind yet, big flakes, the patient kind. The farmhouse was warm, that mattered. The stove had been going since late afternoon yesterday. Oak logs burned down to a steady bed of coals. The radiators ticked faintly in the walls. Ethan liked to keep the place warm in winter, not cozy exactly, but reliable. A house should do its job. He rinsed his mug, set it upside down in the rack, and moved through the kitchen with the ease of long habit. Coat on the hook, boots by the door, calendar on the wall. Still turned to November because he hadn't bothered changing it yet. There was nowhere he needed to be that cared what day it was. Outside, the cold met him clean and sharp, the kind that woke you all the way up. He stood on the porch for a moment, pulling his collar up, listening. Snow whispered against his coat. The fields beyond the barn were already smoothing over, fence posts turning into pale markers in a widening white sheet. He went about his chores without rushing, chickens fed, water checked. The tractor would wait, no sense in starting that until the storm showed its hand. By the time he came back inside, snow clung to his shoulders and hat, melting into dark spots on the floorboards. He set his coat near the stove and poured himself another cup of coffee. The radio sat on the counter, tuned to the local station. He turned the knob until the familiar voice came through, slightly fuzzy. Winter storm warning remains in effect for the county and surrounding areas. Travel is not advised. County Road 9 is expected to be impassable by midday. Ethan nodded. County Road 9 had a habit of disappearing in weather like this. He'd learned that a long time ago. By late morning, the snow had thickened. Wind came with it, gentle at first, then firmer, pushing drifts into the low spots along the road. Ethan stood at the window again, hands in his pockets, watching the fence line fade. He was just turning away when he saw movement. At first, he thought it was his eyes, a trick of white on white. Then he saw it again, a shape where there shouldn't have been one, dark against the snow. A car. It was stopped at an angle near the bend, half on the shoulder, half in the ditch. Not buried yet, but headed that way. Ethan didn't swear. He just sighed, the way you do when something arrives that was always going to, whether you wanted it or not. He pulled on his boots and coat again, grabbed his gloves, and stepped back into the snow. The wind met him harder now, tugging at his sleeves. He walked steadily, not fighting it, following the familiar curve of the road. The car was a small sedan, engine still running, hazard lights blinking weakly through the snow. As he approached, the driver's door opened. A young woman stepped out, immediately apologetic in posture if not yet in words. She wore a thick coat and a knit hat pulled low, snow already gathering on her shoulders. "I'm so sorry," she called out, raising her voice just enough to be heard. "I didn't realize how bad it was." "It gets worse fast," Ethan said. His voice sounded rougher than he meant, carried away by the wind. He softened it. "You all right?" She nodded. "Yes, the road disappeared." "That happens." They stood there a moment, snow settling between them. "I'm Claire," she said, brushing snow from her sleeve. "I'm a nurse. I was driving out to see a patient and..." She gestured vaguely at the white world around them. Ethan looked at the car, then at the road, already beginning to vanish again. He made his decision without drama. "You won't get out of here today," he said. "Or tonight, most likely." Her face fell just a little, not panic, just reality settling in. "There's a house up the way," he added, nodding back toward the farmhouse. "It's warm. You can wait it out there." She hesitated, politeness probably, then nodded. "Thank you, really." He helped her gather a small bag from the back seat. The snow was already filling their footprints by the time they turned toward the house. They walked in silence, the wind carrying their breath away. Ethan didn't mind it. Silence had a way of making things simpler. When they reached the porch, he stamped his boots and held the door open. Warmth spilled out to meet them. The steady, uncomplicated kind. Claire paused just inside, taking off her gloves, her shoulders easing as the heat reached her. She smiled then, small and sincere. "This is," she said, searching for the word, "a warm place." Ethan closed the door behind them, shutting out the storm. "It is," he said. The door latched with a solid, familiar sound. Outside, the wind pressed against the walls as if testing them, then moved on. Inside, the house settled back into itself. Ethan hung his coat on its hook and nodded toward the bench by the door. Boots there, stoves in the kitchen. Claire did as told, moving carefully, like someone who didn't want to leave a mark. She set her bag down, unlaced her boots, and lined them up neatly by the mat. Snow melted into small dark crescents on the floorboards. "Thank you again," she said, quieter now that they were indoors. "I didn't mean to impose." "You didn't," Ethan said. "Weather did." That seemed to ease something in her. She smiled and followed him into the kitchen. The room was the heart of the house, not by design, just by use. A broad wooden table scarred with years of meals, two mismatched chairs pulled close to the stove, a kettle already warming because Ethan liked to be prepared even if he didn't always know what for. Claire took in the room slowly, not nosy, just noticing. "It smells like coffee," she said. "Still fresh enough," he replied. "You want some?" "Yes, please." He poured her a mug from the pot, handed it over. She wrapped her hands around it immediately, letting the heat soak in. "That's good," she said. "Really good." He nodded. Coffee didn't need praise, but he appreciated it anyway. They sat, the stove ticking softly between them. Outside, the snow had picked up again, wind driving it sideways now. The window rattled once, then steadied. "So," Claire said after a while, "you live out here alone?" "Yes." She nodded, accepting the answer as complete. "I'm usually better at checking the weather," she said, "but my last patient was farther out than I expected. By the time I turned back, it was..." She shrugged. "This." "It happens," Ethan said. "Road doesn't look like much until it stops being one." She smiled at that, a small curve of understanding. They drank their coffee in quiet. Ethan found himself noticing things he usually didn't bother with. The way she held the mug like it was something fragile, the faint crease between her brows that softened when she relaxed. "I can call in," she said eventually. "Let them know I'm stuck, if the phone works." "It does," he said. "Mostly." She made the call from the living room, her voice low and professional, reassuring someone on the other end that she was safe. Ethan busied himself checking the stove, adding a log more for good measure. When she came back, she looked relieved. "They said not to worry. Roads are closing all over." "Then you're here," Ethan said. "For a bit." "For a bit," she echoed. They stood there, not quite knowing what came next. Ethan cleared his throat. "There's soup," he said, "if you're hungry." Her face brightened. "I am, very." They ate at the table, the simple meal tasting better than either of them expected. Claire talked a little about her work, the miles she drove each week, the way winter changed everything. Ethan listened. He wasn't much for conversation, but he knew how to listen. As the afternoon wore on, the light dimmed early, snow thickening into a steady wall outside. The house felt smaller then, but not cramped, just contained. "I don't want to be any trouble," Claire said as dusk settled in. "I can sleep in my car if I have to." Ethan looked at her, surprised. "You won't," he said. "There's a spare room." She hesitated, then nodded. Thank you." He showed her down the short hallway, pointed out the bathroom, the thermostat, the extra blankets folded at the foot of the bed. "If you need anything," he said, then stopped. He wasn't sure what else to say. Just say, "I will," she said. That night, as Ethan lay in his own bed listening to the wind, he was aware of the house in a new way, the subtle shift of having another person inside it, another rhythm of breath, another presence held by the same walls. It wasn't uncomfortable. Outside, County Road 9 disappeared completely, swallowed by snow. Ethan woke before the alarm, as he always did, the house still wrapped in that gray-blue quiet that belongs only to winter. For a moment, he lay there listening. The wind had eased, but it hadn't left. It moved around the eaves now, lower, like it was thinking about its next move. He swung his feet to the floor and pulled on his sweater. The hallway was dim, the spare room door closed. He paused there without quite meaning to, then continued onto the kitchen. The stove had burned down overnight but was still warm. He added wood, coaxed it back to life, set the kettle on. Outside the window, the world had been erased and redrawn. Drifts piled high against the fence, the barn roof blurred into the sky. No road, just a suggestion of where one had been. He just poured coffee when he heard footsteps. "Morning," Claire said softly from the doorway. She looked rested, hair pulled back, sweater borrowed from her bag. She took in the kitchen with a familiar appreciation now, like someone greeting a room they already knew. "It's beautiful," she said, nodding toward the window. "Depends what you need to do today," Ethan said. She smiled. "Fair." They ate breakfast together, toast, eggs, nothing fancy. The radio confirmed what they already knew. Roads closed, plows delayed. Another night in, Claire took the news with a quiet acceptance. "I'll call my patients, reschedule what I can." After the call, she stood by the window again. "What do you usually do on days like this?" Ethan shrugged. What needs doing, what doesn't? She considered that. "Mind if I help?" He looked at her, surprised again. "You don't have to." "I know," she said, "but I'd like to." So they fell into an easy rhythm. She helped carry wood, asked questions about the stove, learned how he fed the chickens without letting snow rush inside the coop. She listened when he explained things, really listened, and that made him explain more than he usually would. They worked without hurry. When they came back inside, cheeks pink from the cold, Claire laughed quietly. "I don't think I've been this tired in weeks." "Good tired," Ethan said. "Yes," she agreed. "Good tired." The afternoon passed in small ways. She read by the window. He mended a loose hinge on the pantry door. At some point she made tea without asking, as if she'd always been allowed to. As dusk came on, the house seemed to draw them both inward. Claire sat at the table writing notes in a small planner. Ethan watched the stove the way he always did. "You don't mind the quiet?" she said. "No," he said. "I mind noise." She smiled at that. Later, as they sat with bowls of stew, she said, "It must get lonely." Ethan paused, spoon halfway to his mouth. He considered lying, a quick, polite one. Instead, he said, "Sometimes." She nodded, not pressing. "I think winter makes everything louder, even silence." That felt right. When night came, it was darker than the last. Snow tapped at the windows again, softer this time. The house held steady. Before turning in, Claire hesitated in the hallway. "Thank you," she said again, "for letting me stay." Ethan nodded. "It's a warm place." She smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. The stove burned on through the night, and the wind, finding no way in, moved on. The storm loosened its grip sometime in the night, though neither of them noticed when it happened. It wasn't the kind of ending that announced itself. No sudden quiet, no dramatic clearing, just a gradual easing, like a long-held breath finally let go. Ethan was awake before dawn again. He lay there for a while this time, listening out of habit more than need. The house made its small sounds, the faint click of cooling metal, the whisper of air moving through old vents. Somewhere in the walls, heat traveled patiently from room to room. When he got up, the cold didn't bite the way it had yesterday. That alone told him something had changed. He dressed and went to the kitchen. The window was still dark, but the snow had stopped moving. He opened the back door just enough to feel the air. It was cold, yes, but calmer. The kind of cold that waited instead of pushing. The kettle went on. The stove was fed. By the time the sky began to pale, Claire appeared again in the doorway, hair still loose from sleep. "It's quieter," she said. "It is." They stood together at the window as the light came up slowly, revealing a world made smooth and rounded. Drifts softened the edges of everything. Fence posts peeked out like markers on a map someone had erased and redrawn with care. "It's beautiful," Claire said again, softer than before. Ethan nodded. He felt it too. Not beauty exactly, but order. The land resting. After breakfast, he pulled on his coat. "I'll check the road." "I'll come," she said, already reaching for her boots. They walked side by side, their footsteps the first marks in the new snow. County Road 9 was still there, in theory. In practice, it was a pale stretch of nothing, drifts piled high enough to make any travel a bad idea. "Well," Claire said, exhaling. "That answers that." "Yes," Ethan said, "for today at least." They turned back without disappointment. There was no rush anymore. The storm had decided the schedule, and for once that felt acceptable. The rest of the day passed gently. Claire helped in the kitchen, moving more confidently now, like she knew where things belonged. She asked about the photographs on the wall. Ethan's parents, the farm when it was younger, a younger Ethan standing beside a tractor that no longer ran. He answered without hurry, surprised at himself. In the afternoon, she sat on the floor by the stove, writing cards for patients she wouldn't see this week. Ethan watched her from his chair, the way she paused sometimes, choosing words carefully. Care was something he understood. By evening, the radio crackled with updates. Plows would be out overnight. Roads might open by morning. Claire listened quietly, then turned the volume down. "Looks like I won't be here much longer," she said. Ethan nodded. The thought landed heavier than he expected. He didn't comment on it. That night, the house felt different. not fuller exactly, but aware of itself, as if it knew something was passing through and wanted to hold it gently while it could. Morning arrived slowly, pale and quiet, the kind of light that spreads across snow and makes it glow from within. Ethan moved through the house as usual, the rhythm of chores familiar and unhurried. Chickens fed, water checked, wood stacked. Each motion carried its own weight, and each weight felt lighter for having someone else in the house. Claire was already up tending the kettle. The smell of tea mingled with the lingering scent of yesterday's stew. She glanced over at him and smiled. "You've got a system," she said softly. Ethan shrugged. "It works." "You make it look easy." He said nothing, only nodded. He liked her honesty. They ate in comfortable silence, the house warm around them. Outside, the snow had stopped entirely, leaving the fields smooth and white, glinting faintly under the pale sun. Later they ventured outdoors. Ethan showed Claire the way he'd cleared paths around the barn and the house. Together they added a few fresh tracks through the snow, moving in tandem. She laughed quietly when her boots sank too deep, or a chicken wandered out from under the coop, scattering snow in small arcs. By noon, the light had softened. The world seemed almost fragile, delicate in its whiteness, yet reassuring in its steadiness. They returned inside and made lunch together. Simple sandwiches, tea, and the quiet pleasure of cooking in parallel. There was no rush. Each step was deliberate, each gesture noticed and appreciated. After lunch, Claire took out a small notebook from her bag, flipping through pages of patient notes. Ethan, curious, asked about her work. She spoke carefully, calmly, with a quiet pride, showing no need to impress. Her voice was soft but carried the warmth of someone who truly cared. Ethan listened, not just words, but the pauses between them, the careful attention she gave to details, the patience. It reminded him of long-forgotten mornings, of people he had once shared the farmhouse with. Not family exactly, but companions in daily life, in routines, in small acts of care. When the afternoon deepened, Ethan went to check the stove, topping up the fire. Claire joined him, hands folded around a steaming cup of tea. The heat seeped into her fingers, and she leaned back just enough to watch the flames. By evening, the radio reported roads opening again, though conditions remained tricky. Claire listened quietly. She didn't say anything about leaving yet. They shared dinner, simple as always, and lingered afterward. A small comfort. Conversation flowed easily, yet nothing was forced. Laughter came soft, occasional, like a bell in a quiet room. For the first time in many seasons, Ethan realized how rare it was to have another person move through the rhythms of the house without disturbing them, only complementing them. Night fell, pale and still. The wind whispered against the windows, but it no longer demanded attention. The house, warmed by the stove and shared presence, held its own against the cold. As they prepared for bed, Claire hesitated by the doorway. "Thank you," she said again, but this time her smile carried something deeper. Comfort, relief, maybe even a little fondness. Ethan nodded. "A warm place," he said. The words felt lighter, more natural now, a shared truth rather than a statement of fact. They went to their rooms, the quiet of the farmhouse enveloping them. Outside, the snow gleamed under the moonlight, Inside, warmth lingered, and the house, steady and familiar, held two people at ease with each other for the first time in a long while. Dawn came soft and pale, stretching across the fields like a thin sheet of silver. Ethan stirred first, as usual, listening to the quiet that had settled after the storm. The house was calm, the stove already holding warmth from the night before. Outside, the snow glinted faintly, untouched now, except for the tracks they had left the day before. He moved quietly through the kitchen, putting a kettle on and letting the familiar sounds of morning fill the room. When Claire appeared in the doorway, she looked rested and composed, carrying that gentle ease she had gathered over the past 2 days. "Morning," she said softly. "Morning," Ethan replied. They shared breakfast, slow and deliberate, savoring the warmth of the house and the simplicity of toast, eggs, and tea. Words were few, but the silence between them felt easy, companionable. After breakfast, Claire carefully packed her bag. Ethan watched, not out of impatience, but with a quiet attention, noticing the small gestures she made to fold things neatly, to leave the spare room as she had found it. There was a respect there, mutual and unspoken, shaped by hours of shared quiet. When she was ready, she looked at Ethan. "Thank you," she said again, "for letting me stay, for everything." Ethan nodded. It was a warm place. Her smile was small but genuine. It really was. They stepped outside together. The sun had begun to rise higher now, brushing the fields with soft light. Snow reflected it like pale gold. County Road 9 had been plowed during the night, a ribbon of possibility stretching ahead. Claire paused, looking at the road, then back at the farmhouse. "I'll be fine from here," she said, "but I'll remember this place." Ethan didn't say much. Words felt unnecessary. He watched her walk to the car, the snow crunching under her boots, the quiet weight of shared days between them. When she was gone, the world seemed both larger and smaller. The road ahead stretched empty, yet the farmhouse held a new warmth, not just from the stove, but from the echoes of companionship, quiet understanding, and the gentle rhythm of days shared. Ethan closed the door behind him, then looked out over the fields. The snow glimmered, the wind whispered lightly, and the sky, finally, was clear. The work of the day waited, the chores unchanged, but something inside him felt lighter, held in the ease of a quiet connection and the knowledge that a stranger had become a small part of his world. He went back inside, letting the door click closed behind him. The house was warm, the fire crackled. Ethan allowed himself a small smile. The storm had passed. The road had cleared. And in the farmhouse on County Road 9, a warm place remained, steady and ready